Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing something that's long awaited, something that's been heavily requested on my channel, and that's to be doing an update for Dark Dimension characters. So today, we're going to be talking about what I believe are the best characters that you should bring up for Dark Dimension 3, 4, and 5, because realistically, you want to get the best bang for your buck, which would be the best characters that you can to take them all the way up. There will be a little bit of difference, and I've actually done this in a new way. I've done this, of course, using what's easiest for me is a spreadsheet style to kind of separate each of the different sections for Dark Dimension and kind of go over the different characters and why I believe that they're the best ones to use. So, if you're ready to go, then let's boil this down. Okay, and just to be clear, this will also be made available on my Discord channel. If you want to share this with any of your alliance mates or anything like that, then that'll be available there in the Boilon's Resources channel, where it usually is usually about 6 hours or so after the release of the video, so people don't skip the video in question. So before we get started, though, I need to kind of go over some ground rules here, and so this is what I call, I guess, the Dark Dimension tier list. It's a tier list in a spreadsheet style. Anything that you might see in this with a orangish fill highlight means that they share uniques with other characters. So that is a little bit of an issue when it comes to gearing up characters is, you know, what unique do they use and who else do they share with. So I tried to kind of make that clear as well in case they do. Some definitions, because I use a tier system. So this is a little bit different than the S tier, A tier, that kind of tier system. For me, it's 3 different tiers. So tier 1 are basically the characters that are Horseman related and their teams. So Darkhold, Unlimited X-Men, Gamma, plus other characters. At this point, it's just Spider-Weaver. But these are the highest priorities in order to unlock Apocalypse. So a lot of people are trying to double dip or triple dip or whatever. You know, characters that are relevant to Apocalypse that you can also bring into Dark Dimension. So it's a couple birds with one stone here. Now, Tier 2 are the Node 5 and 10 Scourge team characters. So this is going to be your Web Warriors, this is going to be your Young Avengers, this is going to be your, in some cases, Hero as Guardians. There's a couple that I would maybe consider. And also Bionic Avengers. Now, Bionic Avengers also is covered under this other thing, Tier 2A, which is the current top raid teams. Web Warrior also qualifies under 2A. And so does Bionic Avengers, like I mentioned. So it's important, because in my opinion, the most important characters in your roster actually would be Arena, Raids, and then everyone else. So raid teams is quite high in terms of my gearing priority list. And so therefore, if you can squeeze them in for Dark Dimension, then you probably should. Tier 3, these are some other ones. So these are top Scourge characters for other lanes. These could be like Omega Red, for example, for Villain, because they're very good standalone characters and characters that you might need for other reasons. For example, the Eternals. They're not any of... Actually, they're kind of 2A a little bit with Doomraid Mystic. Of course, people are still using them. And so that's a pretty good example there. And we'll see some of them anyways. But as far as who you should really consider, Tier 1 is definitely the first. So, let's get started with City, because some of them have more options than others. Global has a crap ton, we'll go over them. And a lot of the Horseman characters are actually global, which is a little bit unfortunate. Maybe with the Death Team, it might not be global. Maybe it'll be a little bit more of a expansion into the different realms. For City, I have She-Hulk here at the top. So she is Tier 1, because she is a Horseman character, but she isn't very good. So she is a high priority, but she's very expensive. She's bio. She requires Gravitonium, which does share with Hulkbuster. Later on, we'll look at that. And like I said, she's just not great as a standalone character. I do know people that have taken her into City, and it's okay. Like, she's not really going to activate her passive very frequently. She can taunt a little bit, and she can stun. So she's not the worst in the world, but she's very expensive as far as, you know, mini sets go. And so I want to look at this through the... So just to recap, I should have said this at the beginning. Dark Dimension 3, actually, you need 5 characters to start Dark Dimension 3, but you can actually go in with as little as 1 character, I'm pretty sure, in each of the lanes. Dark Dimension 4, you do need 4 characters per lane, and Dark Dimension 5, you need 5. So you're going to need a lot more characters at the Dark Dimension 5 level than you do at 3 and 4. There are some of these characters who I would, take up to Gear Tier 15, for example, some of the Scourge characters, but I wouldn't necessarily take them to 16. But we do know that, the Horseman characters have to eventually, at some point, go up to Gear Tier 16. So, whether or not they're that good, you're still going to have to gear them at some point, so that's why She-Hulk is here. Now, Squirrel Girl is Tier 2. She's part of the Young Avengers and required for the Famine event. I think that at the very least, you want to take her to Gear Tier 15. I think that's very good. I would actually still consider to take her to Gear Tier 16. As far as my 5 characters who I took into Dark Dimension 5 City are still on this list. So Squirrel Girl, Ghost Spider, Shang-Chi, Scarlet Spider, and Cloak. These are the characters that I took in for my 5. So as far as who I would recommend for 3 or 4 characters, if we're talking before Dark Dimension 5, any of these would qualify. Shang-Chi absolutely hits really hard, so you want to kind of balance out the gear. Unfortunately, City is really clumped up with Bio, and that's just kind of how it is here, other than Shang-Chi. I wouldn't... If they're not on this list, I personally don't believe that they're worth the investment level of anything higher than Gear Tier 15, really, and I think these are still your best options. Other City characters, I think Mr. Negative is City, but at this stage, because he's still a month out, I'm not listing him on the sheet, and maybe in a future update, perhaps, depending on how he goes standalone. But you do need to keep a watch of some of the uniques that these characters have. So, for example, Shang-Chi's Molecular Cloth now is used by Spider Weaver, so if you're interested in gearing her up, then you need to watch out for that. Cloak's Miasma isn't too bad anymore. It does share with other characters, but not a lot of newer characters, so that's somewhat okay. And then, like I said, Gravitonium for Hulkbuster. Unstable Cloth is not really used through that many characters. And as long as you're not using too many Alien Sports characters anymore, because you're not really using symbiotes, then that's not really a thing. And I wouldn't really touch symbiotes at this point unless they get a rework down the line. So these are 7 choices, of which you only need 5 for Dark Dimension 5, or even less if you're running Dark Dimension 3 and 4. And Shang-Chi is definitely a strong standout. She-Hulk, you're going to have to do it, but do it at your own risk, of course. So we're going to move on to Global. We're going to go across the way. So there's a lot. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of characters. It just depends on how you're going to spread out your resources, because when you're building for Dark Dimension, typically you might think of, Origin rather than the lane. So, who am I going to build up next for Mystic? Who am I going to build up next for Bio, Tech, Skill, etc.? And so you want to do a mix of characters sometimes. And so that's why there is a lot of option. Frankly, almost all of these characters here are in Tier 1, which means that you're going to have to build them for Apocalypse. Who you want to build, I would try to perhaps, make it a little bit more balanced as far as the characters go. So, or you could just choose one team, I guess, because they're going to have more synergy together. But characters like Gambit, probably the best member of the Unlimited X-Men. I don't have other members of the Unlimited X-Men here because I don't think that they're very good standalone for Dark Dimension purposes. Characters like Sunfire, Phantom X. Dazzler might be okay. She's not listed on here, but I just don't think that the other two are very good. Agatha and Wong, I think, are pretty okay. Actually, Agatha is better than Wong as far as debuffs go. Wong is really high cooldown, so that's a little bit of an issue there. But he doesn't share uniques with anyone really important. Same with Agatha right now, so that's easy. Gambit obviously shares osmium with Morgan Le Fay, who we'll talk about later on. And then you have Hulk, Abomination, and Brawn, part of the Bio team. So if you were going to use the 3 of them together, that would be acceptable as well. But keep in mind that 2 of them are Gamma. But as far as the overall investment and requirements of the minis, it's pretty low or average-ish, I guess, for the global lane. Other characters that you could use if you've already cleared Dark Dimension 4 would be Doctor Doom. Of course, he has that miasma, which is shared with Cloak, and then Spider Weaver, that molecular cloth with Shang-Chi. Alternatively, there's some raid choices here that you could upgrade as well. Hulkbuster, I think, is a very fine standalone character to include in here because he can actually tank outside of his team. He also gives barrier to everyone. That he just does a little bit more with the Bionic Avengers. I'm not sure that I would really go as far as building up. I have a Gear Tier 16 Bionic Avengers, but that's because I'm way past Dark Dimension 5. So if you're building specifically for Dark Dimension 5 or 4, I'm not sure if I would really take the Bionic Avengers specifically to this, but they are worth gearing. Because not only are they a raid team, they're also the Scourge team for the Death Scourge, right? So these are characters that you're going to want to use. the Bionic Avengers. I just included Hulkbuster because I think he is the best character standalone of all of the characters to choose from. Alternatively, also you have Cap Sam and Sharon Carter, who are your Doom Raid skill characters that you're going to be using. Good thing about Cap Sam is that he doesn't share a unique with anyone really important. Shuri does share Vibranium, but I think she's kind of out of the running now as far as characters that you want to gear up into the Legendary lane. Sharon Carter, Titanium Alloy, also, unless you're gearing up Doc Ock for the Legendary lane, which you probably don't need to now, Sharon Carter's unique is fine as well. So there's a good selection of characters here, and honestly, choosing any of these would be fine. You know, characters that are good in Dark Dimension tend to be ones with decent cooldowns and also solid debuffs, because that's really important to Dark Dimension. So characters like Agatha, Gambit could be really good for his ping on his passive if you have decent stars. Unfortunately, he had a really tough event. And then alternatively, if you have Hulk, Abomination, and Brawn, this could be really good too. So you could do like Hulk, Abomination, Brawn, Gambit, Agatha, if you don't want to do any of these characters here. But these are very easy to add in. These characters here, especially Hulkbuster and Cap Sam, very easy characters to just slide into the team, you know, even by themselves. So just keep that in mind too. Let's move on to Cosmic. Not a lot of options here, let's be honest. There's just not a lot of good Cosmic characters that are worth gearing at this point. And so the top of the list is Evil Strange, or Strange Heartless. He's a tier 1 character. He's part of Darkhold. He is Cosmic. He's usable in quite a handful of places, including Scourges as well as a villain character. A lot of these characters are going to be Mystic. And so you see how like a lot of characters are Bio in City, a lot of characters are Mystic in Cosmic, that there's not a very good mix of origins for this lane. Evil Strange's Prometheum is also shared with Scarlet Witch, I think. I had that tagged for a reason. I'm pretty sure there's more characters, or I got rid of one of the characters that were on here. But the mini sets that are required for these characters are pretty much on the lower end, with the exception of Dormammu, who you won't be using until like Dark Dimension 5's second pass. Icarus and Cersei, you have to use these two. Like, I would hope that by the time you're I know they're not farmable, but I would hope that by the time that, you know, you're like in Dark Dimension 4, that you've somehow managed to unlock them even through orbs. That would be really good, because they're just so powerful that they make a mountain of difference when running through endgame content. So Icarus and Cersei together are just insane. They also have on-spawn in Dark Dimension text, which spreads across the team, so that's really helpful as well. They don't require too many mini sets. You're going to need them for Doom Raid. You're going to use them as Scourges where you can use them, and they're just all around amazing. So keep in mind that Uru is going to be shared with Thor, though, who's on this list as well, alongside Kestrel. So Kestrel is probably your cheaper option as far as other origins go, tech and skill, which are not super saturated at this point because we don't have any Horseman characters that really use this right yet. It does require shield tech. That's only if you're going to be using Miss Marvel up ahead, but if you're not using Miss Marvel in City, then you can definitely just go full bore on... Oh, sorry, and Deathlock as well, just in the background there. Don't think people are taking Deathlock to Dark Dimension, but just he is shield tech now as well. And Thor is Uru, which is shared with Cersei, but... And Thor is a character that I would take to Gear Tier 15. You could even take him to Gear Tier 16 for Dark Dimension 5. And the reason why I mentioned there is because if you guys watched any of the recent videos about the War Scourge, he is the one that's carrying the team. So the stronger the Thor is, the easier that Scourge is going to be for you. The other characters that you could use who I wouldn't take to Dark Dimension 5, because I'm not willing to Gear Tier 16 them, would be Valkyrie and Mighty Thor. So I wouldn't take them to Dark Dimension 5, but I would take them to Dark Dimension 3 or 4. Gear Tier 14 or 15 is very acceptable if you don't have any of the other options. I just wouldn't go the extra mile to Dark Dimension 5 with them. So a lot of the characters in this chart are characters that I'm comfortable with taking to Dark Dimension 5, which means I'm willing to take them all the way up through 3, 4, and 5. T'Challa is on this list as well because there's just not a lot of great cosmic options, and I think that he's still a good character. Even standalone, I think he's good, and he's cheap to build. So, and he's tech, because there's not a lot of, other than Bionic Avengers right now, there's not a lot of use for tech gear. So I think that T'Challa is still a very viable character in this regard. And like I said, his mini set requirements are pretty low. But if excluding Dormammu, it's like 6 characters. Characters that I used, who did I use for Dark Dimension 5? I used Icarus, Cersei, Kestrel, T'Challa, and Phyla-Vell. And that's because I had a lot of extra biogear. I would not personally do that now, though, and that was just kind of desperation on my part. Some people did Ravager Stitcher. Ravager Stitcher is not on my list because he requires gamma radiation, which is now heavily used in the gamma team, so I don't think that's a good idea anymore, but he was a cheap option for Cosmic. I hope that we get some more Cosmic characters down the line, because I just feel like the options are even more limited than what City was up here. At least this is pretty good, and there's other characters I didn't list, like other members of the Web Warriors and things like that, but I just don't think you need to do that now. Cosmic, on the other hand, just not super amazing. So finally, talking about Legendary, this is pretty simple. Okay, I'm going to make this very easy for you guys. Use as many Horseman characters as you can. That includes Morgan Le Fay, Rogue, Red Hulk, eventually Death, probably in a month or two. If you're not there yet, then wait. Omega Red. So these are your top 4. Okay? And these are the best characters that you can possibly use. If you need to, Iron Man is highlighted blue because he's very expensive. Maybe I should highlight that blue as well. Very expensive. 5 mini sets. Very expensive. It is tech geared though, so you might have it available to you. But I don't have Iron Man at gear tier 16. I do have him at gear tier 15, which means that if you need him as a character, you know, feel free to use him in Dark Dimension 4 Legendary. That's fine. But as far as Dark Dimension 5 Legendary honestly, if you can wait, or if you're not super close yet, I would wait for Death, which I know might be about 2 months away, but I don't feel great about leveling up or gearing up too many other legendary characters outside of this top list here, other than Iron Man. I don't think I'm really... If you're going to like put any gear into Shuri or Doc Ock, you might as well do Iron Man at that point. He's a little bit more, but the biggest problem with Iron Man is his shared with gamma radiation. Red Hulk is gamma radiation, Hulk is gamma, Abomination is gamma. There's a lot of... That's why I didn't add Vision to this list, because Vision is also gamma. So as far as using uniques for Dark Dimension goes, you want to spread that out a little bit. And so that's why it's a tough choice. But I would try to hold if you possibly can. I don't think I need to say anything about these characters. You guys know how amazing all of them are. Morgan Le Fay, Red Hulk, Rogue, Omega Red, all solid legendary characters. You're probably wondering why Adam Warlock's not on this list, because he's Mystic and frankly not worth it when you have other characters that are better to consider. And so these are your best bang for your buck characters that you're absolutely going to be using in endgame content. And so I want to maximize that. No longer, I think, is it worth gearing characters because they're cheap or gearing characters because it's easy. You want to gear characters that are going to give you the best value out of your end game, and that's going to be these characters on this list. This is why I separated a line, because there is Shuri and Doc Ock if you're desperate, but the characters at the higher end of the list are going to be the more important ones that you're going to want to take in here. Now, I'm going to have these tables available, like I said, in my Discord, in Boilon's Resources channel, so if you want to take a look at these, if you want to share it with your alliance and things like that, or just have a copy for yourself, then it will be there. Also, let me know in the comments down below if you really think that I missed someone that's really important that I should add to this table. I'm more than welcome to, or I'm more than willing to give a go and take a look at that as well. So that's the end of this video. I hope this helps you guys in getting ready for Dark Dimension, whether you're doing 3, 4, or 5. And yeah, enjoy your day. And until next time, stay safe and healthy. And I will see you all later. Boilon signing out.